coming up this week?
And then I just dropped one poem that I didn't even particularly think twice about. 2 million views, and then the next one, 2 million views. You can tell how nice a town is by just looking at their pigeons. I was really drunk and I went into the bathroom and he was in the bathroom and I was sort of there and I was like, oh, beans on toast, you're like the modern day Bob Dylan. And then I woke up the next day, I was like, God, why did I say that? I was posting and just getting two comments, and one of them would just be, oh, fuck off, you twat.
Welcome back to Mixed Modo. It's great to have you here. This is a show where we invite guests on to talk about their top 5 most significant tracks. Our guest today defies introduction, and the best way to introduce him is to let him take over. So I'll hand over to you, Robbie.
My name's Robbie Hood. I'm a poet from Nottingham, and I thought I'd start with a poem. So this is called "There Used to Be a Rave There." There used to be a rave there. Back in the good old days, we'd spend the night dancing to drum and bass. In the bathroom queue, strangers would become mates as we'd chat about the lack of toilet roll and if man ever went to space. The deepest conversations of the human race can be found in a nightclub bathroom over lines of cocaine. Back in those days, we earned minimum wage and we'd spend it at the bar buying drinks for our mates and strangers we'd never see again. Phone numbers lost on the back of sweaty hands, drunken plans enough to outnumber grains of sand, but damn, those were the days. When you're that age, you think these things will never change. And sure, I still go out, but it's not the same. My knees start to go when it starts to get late. I suppose I'm showing my age, and times change like that old place now covered in fresh paint. The opening of a new Starbucks, the final chapter of this Raver's book. I mean, Costa del Fuck, I've thrown up in the exact spot that girl is waiting for a personalised coffee cup. It's a sign of the times you can't deny, but I remember the nights, memories to last a life. I remember when there used to be a rave there. Thank you. Cheers.
Robbie, that was brilliant.
Yeah, one of the best applauses
Yeah.
I've probably ever had there.
That is, I'm sort of intrigued as to how you get
Yeah.
started. Like, where do you start writing poetry? And your poetry is sort of cultural and political and sort of reflecting on society as well, isn't it? I don't know if there's a certain style to that, but
Yeah. With my poetry, sort of when I'm writing, I suppose yeah, it's political. I do a lot of political stuff, but I try and focus on the minds of people. So that's sort of where my stuff comes from, rather than this is an issue with the world. Let's talk about it. I try and get into the minds of different people's opinions and explore it, and then try and counter argue it in the same perspective. My work originally started not very political, and I do a lot of stuff that isn't political. And really, it started through John Cooper Clarke, if you know who that is, famous sort of punk poet from the 70s. And I sort of discovered him thanks to the Arctic Monkeys, with I Want to Be Yours, and then it was sort of a wormhole into John Cooper Clarke, then into Bukowski, and so on and so forth. But my original works was just ripping off John Cooper Clarke,
but
and
what kind of drew you to that to him? Say, like, what drew you to him? What made you
yeah,
interested in him?
I think because I originally started off in music, in like sort of punk bands and indie bands, and then found myself sort of without a band trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And I'm not a good singer, I can't sing. And I kind of just knew I wanted to do something creative where I can get up on stage, and poetry sort of found me
Okay.
in that sense. And yeah, and I saw what John Cooper Clarke was doing, and I thought, let me have a go at doing that. So I wrote a poem called Next Day Delivery, what's about every Hermes delivery drivers, and yeah, and I just performed it to my mates, and they were like, "That's actually really funny." And then I did one about kebab shops in the morning, and they just sort of became this thing that I do like on nights out and to my mates, and they sort of became like little jokes. And then I thought, I'll do an open mic, and it sort of went from there, and progressed into more political and more social
And do you find
commentary.
it? Does it come quite naturally, or are you up kind of all night writing? And
Um, yeah, it depends on the poem. Some so really, I don't spend hours trying to write something, because I think that if you're forcing it, it's not going to come. But there is certain poems that will be with me for 4 or 5 years, certain lines, and I'll go, I want that song. So like, you can tell how nice a town is by just looking at their pigeons. I had that for 3 or 4
such a
years,
great line.
and I was like, I have no idea. I have no idea what this means. And then like I was just walking back from work and I was like, oh, it's about classism. It's about if you go to Windsor, the pigeons are, these healthy looking, beautiful birds. And if you come to Nottingham or Derby, they look a bit rough. And it's about that sort of classism and location and how that can affect your opportunity in life. So sort of some will just sit with me for 3 or 4 years. Certain lines, there's still certain lines that I've not put in poems, and then other ones will come all in one go. Like Selective Outrage, what is my biggest poem probably, that came to me in 15 minutes. I just wrote like that and then recorded it and posted it, and
It-
it,
yeah,
it did what it
yeah,
did
amazing.
really.
And are you a pen and paper man or laptop? Okay.
Laptop. I'm Gen Z, yeah, 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 and I'm also dyslexic. So if I did pen and paper, then I'd be in a right mess. So it would take me hours. Then it would definitely. But yeah, no, normally a laptop. But yeah, recently, most of my poems I've been writing recently, I write in the car on my way to work and
Okay.
back, because it's about an hour long drive. So I write just in my head and use Siri notes. So I say, "Hey Siri, make
Okay.
a note," and do it like that. And then basically I have to memorize the whole poem because I can't look
Yeah.
down. And sort of at the end of the day, when I get 10 minutes, I merge it all together to make
Wow.
this poem. Um, and that tends to be how I'm doing it at the minute. And a lot of that now tends to be using music. So I'll have certain songs on in the car and go, okay, this is kind of, and that beat,
So you do
and
it to like a rhythm.
use that as a way. So
Yeah.
yeah, kind of. With a lot of the poems I'm doing at the moment, it sort of goes through that, and then some will just be
Yes.
conversational and more
Yeah.
free flowing.
Amazing. I'm going to ask this to all my guests, Robbie. How did you find picking your top five?
Um, I found it easy and hard in equal measure. So I was like, well, if I'm picking my top 5 songs ever, I'd be here for
Yeah.
ages. So I went for top 5 songs that sort of bookmark each chapter of my life so
Okay.
far. So I've gone for
Yeah.
that
Good.
really. It was quite hard though. Some songs didn't make the cut that probably should have,
You feel quite sad when
yeah,
you have to cut one out, don't you? You kind of go, but I love that song.
yeah,
I can't cut it out, and you have to.
yeah. And artists as well, and there's a lot of bands where I'm like, but they're such a
Yeah.
big band in my life. I'm like, but there's no, these are the songs that sort of bookend different
Yeah,
chapters of my
yeah. I
life.
think because originally it was going to be your top five songs ever for the show, and
Mm,
then I was talking about it with mates and stuff, and then I tried to do it, and top five ever is so broad, it's
yeah.
almost impossible. So then significant is actually, you look back on your life and you kind of go, actually these resonate with me because at that time I was doing this and stuff, and I think it's slightly
Hmm.
easy in your top five ever, but. Let's go on.
Yeah,
Let's go on to
definitely.
first, which is
Yes.
from just a great band. I'm a big fan from Sheffield, Pulp. I'll just give a bit of background and then we'll play a clip. So Pulp formed in unbelievably 1978 in Sheffield by Jarvis Cocker. He was 15. And they went through various incarnations. They signed a few deals, record deals in the 80s, but typically the record companies just sort of ripped them off and didn't promote them properly, and they sort of flopped commercially, the albums they had then. It wasn't until they signed to Island Records and then they started in the 90s with their sort of big albums. So His and Hers, Different Class, and This Is Hardcore. As with a lot of bands from the sort of 80s and 90s, they took a big break in the early 2000s and came back last year with a new album called More and a world tour. And I saw them in London last year, and they were immense. And Jarvis Cocker, I mean, he's in his early 60s, I think now. He's such a
Yeah.
charismatic performer. He was sort of you can take your eyes off him. He's brilliant. Um,
Yeah, he's fantastic,
yeah.
isn't he? He's almost like a cool maths teacher. That's what I like to think of Jarvis Cocker.
And you chose
Yeah.
Disco 2000. Let's play a little clip. Robbie, tell us about this track.
I mean, it's a banger, isn't it? Just to start with, Disco 2000. It's a karaoke classic for myself. But really, for me, this was the easiest one to choose out of all of them because when I was about probably 7, 8 years old, my dad sort of sat me down in his BMW, and when like you're that age, you think your dad's like really cool and stuff, and he was like, "Let me show you real music," and he had him on cassette. Like this is the early 2000s. I don't know why he didn't have CDs, but it was cassette, and he showed me Disco 2000 and Don't Look Back in Anger by
Classics.
Oasis. And Disco 2000, I just remember that initial guitar coming in, and it just like changing my world and blowing my mind. And yeah, it just completely from then on really just very interested in music. Started a band, stuff like that, like
Yeah.
primary school band.
What from that moment,
So
do you think?
yeah, pretty
Wow.
much. Yeah, I sort of discovered music through that. It was sort of one of those moments where you just sort of, it's almost like you've always heard music, but that's a moment where it gets turned on, and you're like, oh, okay, this is what it is. And I think as well, another reason why that song works so well for me and sort of resonated with how I work as a person is because it's a story from start to
Yeah.
finish, and it has this little twist at the end, and it feels very much like. Um, I've sort of taken a little bit of that in some of my poetry where there tend to be stories as well. A lot of the stuff I do are stories from start to finish and
Yes.
characters and situations and how are these characters going to react. So yeah, I think that song stuck with me throughout my life. And yeah, it's just an absolute banger, really. But yeah, that definitely just woke me up to music and started a little
And is
journey,
your dad
really.
a big music fan? Does he still influence you?
No, not
Oh,
really.
okay.
No, 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 no. He's not a massive music guy. He likes Oasis, likes sort of the '90s Britpop. Loves a bit of Elvis as
Okay.
well. Very, very much an Elvis guy. But no, that's the weird thing. I don't come from a particularly music family. My mum loves a bit of Northern Soul. She was originally from up north, so a lot of Northern
Nice.
Soul. But not much. Not. I didn't grow up in a heavily music family at all. No one played an instrument or anything
Okay.
like that. It was more, well, my mum can play one song on the piano,
We can all play one song. Actually, I
but yeah,
can't.
yeah. But no, it wasn't particularly a music family. But it was just something that drew me to music. And then once I discovered Bowie
Yeah.
and Buddy Holly as well,
Wow.
that was sort of
Did you then sort of go on a voyage of discovery, going back to kind of 50s,
yeah.
60s, like all sorts?
Yeah, yeah. So Buddy Holly was because of the Buddy Holly show. So that drew me to Buddy Holly. But I sort of went back through the decades to went to Bowie, Michael
Wow.
Jackson, sort of the
Yeah.
greats, yeah, and that was sort of where my interest was. Um, yeah, so I didn't really listen to music of the time at that age. What was weird, I was mostly sort of listening to sort of these 90s and 80s and 70s artists, the Beatles as well. Massive Beatles fan because of my mum was into the Beatles. So
Okay.
I'd go and go, I like this. What else have
Yeah.
you got? And then they'd go, oh, you should listen to this, and you sort of get led that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was sort
Yeah.
of where it went.
Amazing. Your choice number two is
Mm,
Jamie T. Let me tell you about Jamie
yes.
T. Jamie Trays is his actual surname. He grew up in Wimbledon, which is very close to where I grew up, which is not relevant at all, but I just thought I'd throw it in there. He's an English singer, songwriter, rapper, guitarist, and record producer. His first album in 2007 was called Panic Prevention, and it was called that because apparently he used to get panic attacks, and this was his sort of way of not having panic attacks, I guess. It got a very lot of early backing from Radio 1, Zane Lowe, and Joe Wiley. And the track you have chosen is Sticks and Stones from his second album in 2009, Kings and Queens. He was described, I don't know how like this stuff is true or not, but he was described as the bastard love child of Billy Bragg and Mike Skinner doing his best Joe Strummer impression. Which you think about it, you kind of go, God, yeah, that's spot on.
It's
Yeah,
about
yeah.
right, yeah.
Let's play a quick clip. I've got to tell you, I saw Jamie T in Brixton like years ago. It was just,
Oh
it was maybe
wow.
2011, 2010 is when this was out. And when you see him live, he speeds everything up by about almost two times the speed. So it's really hard to follow. But his whole band, they're really spot on time. And then, but the people in the audience are sort of shouting out, going, "Can you slow it down?" He was like, "Fuck off! This is my bloody concert. I'll do it at what speed I like." It's really funny.
Sorry for the interruption. If you have a top track with a great story, then you could be featured on the show. Just fill out the form in our bio and we may be in touch. Also, if you're enjoying the show so far, like and subscribe. Now let's get back to it.
Yeah. So why Jamie T?
Jamie T, yeah, definitely probably like my favorite artist of all
Oh,
time.
really?
Someone who I always go back to. Yeah, I think that I don't know. It's just yeah, I love that he mixes rap with indie music and guitar music. And I suppose again, I sort of found him at a time in my life where um, so with that, I was sort of 14, 15, and going to house parties, and that was during like the rise of grime and sort of that early sort of grime era. So it was mostly like heavy rap music, and grime and sort of drum and bass. And it wasn't until later on when I sort of got into drum and bass, but that was more just because of clubs. And but at house parties, I was always like, this music ain't really for
Okay.
me, but I want to go to house
Yeah.
parties. And then Jamie T Sticks and Stones got played at a house party, and it was like someone had finally put on a good CD or like put on a good song through the Orcs, and I was like, okay, what is this? Again, just sort of discovered it. And you know, I was of that age where like the year 11s were like seen as like the cast of Skins, and like they were like immortalized, and we all looked up to them. And Jamie T Sticks and Stones was like one of the very few indie songs and guitar songs that were being played in that sort of circle when I was that age. And yeah, just went from that one song to Sheila, and then to the whole of his discography. Um, but yeah, absolutely fantastic song, and I think it captures that sort of messy youth. And you know, everything doesn't have to be perfect. It's all sort of like the song is just going from one thing to
Yeah.
another and being very much reflective of the time. And even though it was 6 7 years old when I was coming up, it was still very much prevalent. And yeah, just an amazing song. And then I started a band that was literally ripping off Jamie T, and we did okay, and and that was it. And we just rip off Jamie T.
So as in
And
like it's an indie
yeah,
guitar band and you'd rap over it in a way. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, basically, yeah, just rap
Yeah.
music over guitars, but not in the Rage Against the Machine way, in the Jamie
Yeah.
T, very British way
It's sort
of,
of, I feel like it's
you
not
know,
done enough. I think it's almost like there's a massive gap in the
yeah, no,
market for that because I'd listen to it all
there
day.
is, and we tried to tell people. We did try and tell people, but no one would listen. But yeah, no, a lot of so I was in a band called the Blems, and we did release an EP, and if you listen to it, it's literally Panic Prevention Part Two. It's straight up that. And yeah, I suppose as well to sort of reflecting it on. So those songs were some of the first actual music that I wrote. So Jamie T is a direct influence on my writing and starting off
Okay.
writing. And those songs were about sort of people we knew or stories that we'd heard, and creating these characters. And then that led into poetry later on. But that early EP that I did, that was all very much based on Jamie T and those working class values and those working class people that you meet, that a lot of his music's based on, and sort of going out and getting pissed, and the characters that you meet on nights out. So yeah.
And it's very sort of British life, isn't it? If it was like as you're growing up, you
Hmm.
know, everyone takes part in that in some way, shape, or form and stuff. Have you heard of
Yeah,
a band called the Anomalies?
I've
Okay,
not,
so
no.
just they're quite old, but they're like 2000 and sort of late, maybe 2008, 2009, and they tried to
Yeah,
blend rap with indie guitar-y pop stuff, and I absolutely
cool.
loved them. And then they sort,
I'll have to give them
yeah,
a
and they
listen.
didn't get anywhere, and they disbanded, so it was a real shame. Um,
Oh, it seems to
it
happen a lot,
does,
doesn't it,
and it's gutting
unfortunately?
when it does.
Um, Yeah, but no, and Jamie T's he's done a new song now with Fred. Well, he's done a remix of one of his songs called Hippodrome. He's now had it remixed by Fred again. So a whole new audience is discovering Jamie T through dance music and house music, and it's kind of like I'm watching the next generation do what I did, where they'll be at a house party, not enjoying the music, and then you know Hippodrome or Lights Burn Dim or the remix will come on, and they'll be like, "Hang about, what's this?" and discover Jamie T. Yeah, so hopefully that happens. Thanks to Fred again. So yeah, really, really good artist.
Your choice number 3, Weak
Mm.
Become Heroes, The Streets. So The Streets, essentially, as you know, I'm sure, Mike Skinner, started in
Yeah,
Birmingham in the early 90s. He released his first album in 2002, Original Pirate Material, and he did 4 further albums. And then, like a lot of these bands, took a break, and now he's back. I think in a couple of years ago, he released his 6th studio album. Is that right? And then he's kind of gigging and touring and stuff last year as well.
yeah, and he made a film as well. He
Did
did a
he?
film as well along with that. Yeah, yeah, terrible film, but but he did make a film.
What, as
He
a
did.
fictional film or like a documentary about him?
A fictional
Ah,
full feature
wow.
film. We went to see it in Birmingham for the premiere because you could buy tickets for the
Right.
premiere. It's now on YouTube, so you can watch it for free.
There's a reason he could do
It's
that.
not his greatest success,
At least he
yeah.
tried, bless him. At least he
At least
tried.
he tried. You know what? You got to put it in there for
Yeah,
effort.
exactly. Considered one of the most important and influential acts within the trajectory of hip hop, garage, and grime music. Is that true? I don't. I mean, I obviously heard of the Streets,
Yeah, I'd
but
say so.
I
Yeah.
was never. I never followed him like many people did. Let's have a quick clip.
All the commotion becomes floating emotions. Same piano loops over. Arms wave, eyes roll back, and jaws fall open.
I mean, I can really see why you, or like lyrically, he's like a genius,
Yeah.
and I can really see
Yeah.
how the influence would come on you. So, but why this song?
This is this just is the era of going to clubs and taking my first pill and sort of discovering that life. And that was something that was, it's dangerous and it can catch you, and there is a lot of, but I think that those early days of that club scene and being in that era of sort of nightclubs in basements where there's 30 people listening to drum and bass and garage was a very prevalent moment in my life, and sort of between the ages of like 18 and 23, and yeah, and that song would be the song that we'd listen to driving home, like in the
Right,
taxi on the way home as the sun rised,
beautiful.
and it just reminds me of those days. And yeah, and it's just like that piano, it's just gorgeous, that little loop. And I've tried to rip it off when I was doing music. I tried to rip it off again and again and figure out what the hell those chords are. It must be the most basic chords ever, but there's such a tone to it that just feels
Yeah,
nostalgic.
it really does.
And yeah, lyrically, it's just yeah, very clever. Like a lot of his music as well, very clever lyrically, and the Streets was definitely a big influence on how I write music. Don't Mug Yourself is another one where it's very much a character, and he knows that he's playing a character. He knows that the Streets isn't Mike Skinner and Mike Skinner isn't the Streets, and a lot of his stuff plays on um, those characters that you meet on
Yeah,
nights out, and yeah, that's sort of again something that I've definitely taken influence on, taken influence from, and yeah, just an absolute moment in my life, and that song sort of encapsulates it. Yeah, I think another thing as well with the Streets that I took a big reference from is so I'm going to write 3 books and I'm done with poetry. I'm very much a trilogy kind of
okay.
guy, and the way the Streets did his albums is very much because each album had like a theme, especially after sort of the second album, they all had a theme. So he went into like fame, and then he went into like technology, and he went into like religion, and these themes of, and having an album where this is what I'm going to talk about, and then I'm not going to pick
Mm.
it up again. I found that really sort of, that worked for me, and I found that really influential, and I love when artists do that and when artists create concept albums, and the Streets are the big one
And,
for
and I'm presuming that the concept is based around something that was going on in his life. Obviously, the fame bit is, but
that.
if there's a religious
Yeah, of
concept,
course.
then he was maybe dabbling with that as well. And
Yeah, his dad died, and he wrote an album. The song called "Never Went to Church," but it's sort of that album. Everything is borrowed. I think it's called "Everything is Borrowed." That's the lead single on it. That album is all sort of about life and death, and coming to terms with life and death,
Grief and
and
loss.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think that,
yeah,
yeah, exactly. There is definitely some bad songs on there as well, where it's like, Mike, you need to like probably cut some of these songs off the album. But I admire the concepts of
yeah,
them and going, this is the topic for
yeah,
this album, and then we're moving on to
yeah,
something else. And I think that's something that I've definitely taken
yeah,
influence
yeah.
from.
Excellent. So your next one, your next choice, Well
Yeah.
Gone Crazy, Beans on Toast. I'd never heard of
Yes.
Beans on Toast. I've got to be honest before, and then I'd listened to the first
Yeah.
5 seconds of this track and went, "I love this track. It's amazing." But Beans on Toast, I've got to say, really bad name for a band, but it's not really a band. It's
Yeah.
one guy,
Terrible.
right? It's Jay McAllister. Grew up in
Hmm.
Braintree in Essex, and he started Beans on Toast at his local pub in London, apparently. But he's performed at Glastonbury quite regularly, I believe. He supported Kate Nash when she was huge. He released his debut album in 2009, which had 50 tracks on it. It was a double album with 50 tracks. That's got to be unheard of. That's
Yeah.
insane. And he supported Frank Turner, which I can really hear the influence of Frank Turner on his UK Stadium tour. And he's still touring, and he's released 18 albums. The last one from last year, Kill Them With Kindness. So prolific is a word for him, I should suggest. And
Hmm.
Well Gone Crazy, that your choice was released in 2009. Let's play a clip.
I'm not buying whatever you're selling. That's why all of the people are rebelling.
It's just brilliant. I love that
It
clip.
is.
So why this one, Robbie?
So Beans on Toast, really, I mean, he sort of stands out as the outsider from all the other music that I listen to. But Beans on Toast is another big influence on my writing. When I sort of left the band, I sort of would then. It was then time with maybe doing folk music because, like, you just need, you can age gracefully being a folk singer. All you need is a guitar. You don't need a band. You don't have anyone to share your beer with or anything like that. It sounds like a good
Yeah.
life. And Beans on Toast, he's very much political in his music. Writes about life as well, but does a lot of political songs. And he was sort of a way of me learning more about the world and my opinions through his music, and sort of not everything that he says I agree with. There is certain moments where I'm like, oh, you're going a bit conspiracy here when he's talking about like 5G frequencies are
Okay.
taking over. But in general, his way of looking at the world is fantastic. And I think that the way I describe Beans on Toast music is it's like primary school music for adults. Like when you used to be in primary school and they make you sing like he's got the whole world in his
Yes.
hands and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Sort of like feel
Yes.
good, optimistic
Yeah.
music, but it points out these are serious issues that are going on. We are losing our hold on democracy, and very bad people are in control of the world. And I think that I've always been aware of that, but Beans on Toast sort of made the light switch on. Is, oh no, you can actually write about this and do something creative
Yes.
and hopefully change people's minds with
And also
music.
not be really miserable about it, because his stuff is quite
Yeah,
upbeat and make you feel good.
exactly.
But you listen to the lyrics and it's like, wait, what?
Yeah, exactly. It's existential dread in a major key. Really, it's Beans
Well,
on
that should be
Toast.
the name of their
Um,
next album. It's brilliant.
It's a good name actually. Yeah, I might have to copyright that. But no, absolute joy. I saw him live, and I was really drunk, and I went into the bathroom, and he was in the bathroom, and I was sort of there, and I was like, "Oh, Beans on Toast, you're like the modern day Bob Dylan." And then I woke up the next day, I was like, oh, "God, why did I say that?" As you
Yeah.
do. But yeah, so I would admire him from a distance from
Did
now on. But
you
no,
did
absolutely
you sort of seek
fantastic
him
singer.
out when you were we left the band? Were you kind of going, who else does this kind of thing?
Um, Sort of. So there was a song called "The War on War" that sort of, like how algorithms work, and it just sort of brought it up, and that's about like, sort of, why is there a war on drugs when there could be a war on this and a war on that, and all these different things. I'm like 22 at the time, and like discovering LSD, and I'm like, yeah, this guy's got it
Yeah.
right, and then you sort of, and then sort of discovered all of his music through that, and then it stayed with me after that period of my life. But I think that he sort of, yeah, he made me realize that what's wrong with the world, but also what's right with it,
Yeah,
and that eternal optimism and looking out for each
yeah.
other. And I think that's the most
And
important
it's really
thing.
important at this time because it's quite easy to get very, you look at the world and you get really despondent and disheartened and it's quite miserable. And to find something that can pick you up, I think is key to sort
Yeah,
of surviving almost nowadays, isn't it? I think.
exactly. Yeah, and I think we're um, a lot of the political music and also political poetry is very much, this is all
Mm,
bad, nothing's going to go
mm,
right. These are the problems, and there's no
yeah,
solution. And I think that really there is a solution. It's just going to take a while, and you know, humans have disagreed since the dawn of time and will continue to disagree. But if we can get into a room with people who we don't agree with, or write something that makes them go, actually, to be fair, he's got a point, that hopefully makes a little difference. And I think that's what we need to do a little bit more of. And I think that's what Beans on Toast is doing, because, people who might not necessarily agree with him will go to a gig and dance to his songs and not really listen to the lyrics, but then they might hear one thing and go, actually, no, he's cool and he says this, so I actually agree with him, and then the world gets
yeah.
better.
And I also think, from your point of view, the building in when you build in comedy and funny stuff into your poetry,
Hmm.
that has the same effect. It's
Yeah,
like it's not really heavy, but it's got a good message,
yeah,
but it makes you kind of smile. And I think that makes it kind of not easy to listen to, but not quite so depressing to listen to, because otherwise it would just be,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly, no. And I've done poems like that. I mean, I have a poem called The End Is Nigh, where it's literally the world is going to end, we're all going to die. And it is, I read it back now and I'm like, dude, you need to lighten up a little bit. So I'm trying to write more stuff these days that is still touching on politics, and social commentary, but trying to find perspectives that haven't been looked at yet, and trying to see it as a glass half full. But the glass needs changing, but the glass is half full.
So your final choice, Robbie,
Yeah.
is by a band called Wonder Horse. Now, you sent me these songs yesterday, and I sort of do the clips and prepare them and stuff. And I heard this, and I was like, oh my god, I love that song. And I've been playing it incessantly all day today. I just play it over and over again. I absolutely
It's
love
that
it.
it's that bridge. It's
There's
the
something.
bridge every time.
Yeah, it's amazing, and his lyric and his voice is so kind of
Yeah.
raspy. So this is a band called Wonder Horse. Let me tell you about them. I'm sure you know, but it is formed around a singer called Jacob Slater, who apparently played Paul Cook in the Pistols TV series in 2022. He was living in Newquay in Cornwall at the time when he put the band together. His first album, Cub, from which this song that you've chosen is taken, released in 2022. Enemy said it was one of the best albums of 2022. I don't know if that's good or bad from the Enemy, but because I hate what the Enemy say generally. Some of the most well-crafted and interesting rock songs of this decade. They've supported Fontaines DC, Pixies, Foals, Sam Fender, and Dig Glastonbury last year and 2023, because I saw them last year. Never heard this song before, but I absolutely love it. Let's play a clip.
Now I live in a basement, a blade in my wrist. I think this is over, think this is
I find it hard to describe why I love that song so much, but I think it's his voice and the story he's telling. It's just
Yeah.
genius. And why this song
Yeah.
then, Robbie?
Same really. So this song is I think this song is J- Wonder Horse at their best, and I think his name's Jay Slater, if
Jacob
I'm right in
Slater, yeah,
thinking.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
Jacob Slater, yeah, yeah. He is an absolute genius that, in my opinion, will probably go down as like a big artist in a few years' time. I weirdly enough, right? So I used to listen to a band. I think they were called the Dead Pretties. In 2016, and I love that band. They only ever released 3 songs, and I love that band. And I always used to listen to those songs. Like years later, I'd still listen to those 3 songs. And there's a song called Confidence, and then there's another one, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but absolutely fantastic, the 3 songs. And I was like, oh, it's a shame this guy never did music after this, and this was it. And then Wonder Horse came out a couple of years ago. I discovered him, and I was like, this sounds like that lead singer. But I was like, it can't be, but it sounds exactly like him. And then I googled it, and I was like, oh my god, it's him. What are the chances of that? Because when I was listening to them, they only had 10,000 streams, and now they're like
yeah,
millions
yeah.
and doing really well. But no, I just think the song itself is a reflection on regret and on looking back at moments of your life and moments when maybe you could have done more, but but you didn't. And someone, I mean, in the song, someone is clearly going through a hard time, both with their health and their mental health, and they're saying, you know, if I was in your shoes, I'd be jumping, and he's not. And you know, you've got a gift, go and do something with it, and he's not. And I think that artists and you know, artists are just people who have the time to make stuff. Really, people in general, I think everyone's creative, and I think the difference is you got to just put yourself out there, and it's scary, but you got to do it, and you got to just, you know, if it's successful, it's successful. If it's not, it's not. But you
You've
know,
done it.
there's always someone in a worse situation who's looking at you going, if I was in your shoes, I'd be jumping. And I think that that's what he's doing. And I think that, you know, 10,000 streams 10 years ago, and now he's got millions of views. So yeah, it's a call to every single person to, if you've got something that you want to do it and be creative, because you're going to regret it if you don't.
And I think a lot of that is around fear of failure, though, isn't it? I think
Yeah.
for what, putting yourself out there, and the worry is that you're not going to be any good. People are going to laugh at you. You're not going to achieve what you want to achieve with it, and all that stuff really play. I mean, does even doing stuff like I'm sure you have it. I definitely have it with this podcast and stuff, where you kind of go, oh, no one's going to listen to this, but actually, it doesn't really matter because I really enjoy doing it. I love talking about music and stuff. So I think it's
That's the thing, 100%. If you enjoy it, and if you genuinely feel like you need to do it, because, not being funny, I mean, with my poetry, I was getting 1,000, 2,000 views on every poem, and then I just dropped one poem that I didn't even particularly think twice about. I was like, oh, I'll post that, 2 million views, and then the next one, 2 million views, and then 100,000, 400,000, and it built up a little bit of a following. Obviously, hopefully, I can sustain it. That's the hard bit, and build on it even more. But I was posting and just getting 2 comments, and one of them would just be, oh, fuck off, you twat, and that. But
ouch.
you don't care. You have to learn that cringe is good. And all of these great artists, they all have gone through a period where people have laughed at them, and people have found it funny or embarrassing, and you just need to not listen to it, and take the view that you just need a little bit of luck. And if you just keep going, if you keep throwing darts at a dartboard, one of them will hit bullseye eventually.
Oh, that's a great theory. I love that. Robbie, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I loved it. Thank you, Nige.
Do you want to tell the audience where they can find you?
Yes, so I've got a few gigs booked in for later in the year, and I'll be posting them on my Instagram. I use Instagram basically as my channel for everything at the moment. I will start branching out, but at the moment it's mostly Instagram. So it's robbie.hood.poetry. Yeah, follow me, drop me a message, and it'd be great to connect with everyone, and hopefully you like my stuff. But yeah, some gigs later in the year around the country, hopefully. And yeah, if you are looking for someone to book me.
Robbie, I would love to see you live. I'm going to keep a lookout for your dates. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We will be back next time with a new guest. In the meantime, have a great time.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. And if you want to be on the show, fill out the form in our bio. See you next time.